Welcome to a new deep dive. Today, we're taking the plunge into one of EverQuest's most notorious zones, Kedge Keep. If you played EQ, you probably have some memories, or maybe nightmares,
Yeah,
about this place.
definitely memorable.
It's, completely underwater, super challenging, and it throws up this huge barrier right away. You have to breathe water.
Yep, no way around it.
Whether you found some magic item or more likely begged a druid for that enchantment, right? Without it, you just couldn't survive.
Absolutely fundamental. It wasn't just a gimmick. It told you the zone was serious business.
Yeah. And it got this reputation for being incredibly hard and maybe a bit unfairly for not having great rewards, but there's definitely more to it than that.
And that's exactly what we're digging into today. Using the sources, we want to look past just the difficulty, We're going to peel back the layers. Look at the actual in-game lore, the tragedy of the Kedge people. Put the zone in its geographical context on Fadewar. And this is the really interesting part, I think. Uncover those deep, deep Dungeons & Dragons roots that really shaped how hard it was. We're basically connecting those punishing mechanics back to old-school tabletop thinking. That whole hard-ass DM philosophy one creator mentioned, it's baked right in.
Okay, let's unpack this then. So, before it all went wrong, Kedge Keep wasn't just a monster pit.
No, not at all.
It was the heart of the Kedge civilization. The lore describes them as, well, not just fish monsters, but this intelligent, fish-like race, focused on science, on magic.
Highly advanced. The sources really paint a picture of past glory. Think about that big marble portico entrance you can still see in Dagnor's cauldron.
Oh, yeah, that ruin.
Exactly, a remnant. Historical accounts suggest Kedge Keep dates back to their Third Empire, which was supposedly the twilight of their society, so they'd been around a long, long time.
So, a really sophisticated culture, then.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
The sources suggest it was probably a major religious center, with a big temple to Prexus, the Ocean Lord. And that detail is important, Prexus. Not the triumvirate of water. That's a key theological point in Norath.
Okay.
And there are hints, it might have been a government seat too, like the Estate of Unrest nearby. It's thought that might have been where they hosted visitors, ambassadors from Terran nations.
Wow, so they interacted with surface dwellers.
It suggests a pretty outward-looking society, yeah.
And their city, their architecture, it was built for them, right? Totally aquatic.
Exactly. The sources say explicitly not designed for land dwellers. No stairs, no normal doors. Instead, you had these Creyson vertical tubes and Pawson horizontal tubes for getting around. Even the lighting was alien special underwater lichen, or these lamps made from, glowing parts of deep-sea fish.
Huh. Wild. A whole different world.
Totally built by them, for them.
Which brings us to the tragedy, the big one. Finagil Atropos.
Finagil.
He's the last known survivor, right? From this important family, the Atropos line sorcerers, scientists.
Yeah, and he was driven, completely consumed by ambition, wanted to be better than his ancestors, saw limits everywhere, and just couldn't accept them.
Okay.
Spent decades researching, apparently even made a spell so he could pop out of the ocean briefly and learn from other cultures. Just relentless focus on getting more power, breaking those limits.
And that ambition didn't end well.
No, not at all. It led to this catastrophe. He tried to cast this massive spell he designed himself.
Okay.
And he chose the Temple of Prexus to do it. Wanted to show off his magnificence and glory to his people, to his god, basically.
Bad idea.
Terrible idea. His powers were too undisciplined. A maelstrom of arcane power just surged through him, formed this glowing sphere.
Oh, wow.
And it just enveloped the whole city in a deadly net.
A net of magic. That sounds awful.
It was devastating. The sources suggest the power might have even been amplified by Prexus's presence in the temple.
Really?
Yeah, and that combined force was just too much for mortal souls. The Kedge weren't, physically vaporized.
Yeah.
Their souls got ripped out. Violently ripped into the astral realm of the Ocean Lord. Thousands of them gone in an instant as he finished the spell. But weirdly, simple fish were okay.
But Finzel, he survived. How?
Somehow. Yeah, the lore says he survived, retreated into deepest parts of the ruined keep. And he's tormented, constantly seeing his people die because of his reckless thirst for power.
Jeez.
And that pain, that guilt, it just festered over time into this venomous hatred for all other beings. He's described now as just ill-tempered and threatening.
So surviving wasn't a win for him. It was like Punishment.
That's exactly what the sources imply. Perpetual punishment. He's forced to live forever with what he did.
Yeah.
It's like a classic Greek tragedy, hubris.
Right, the tragic flaw.
Yeah. Kedge weren't beaten by some enemy. They were destroyed from within by one of their own, trying to become more than he was. Kedge isn't just a dungeon. It's like this living tomb, a monument to his failure.
And what about the mermaids you find there?
Ah, yes. They're described as being under the enchantment of Finnegal.
So he controls them.
It's just his power, his malevolence, is still active. Maybe some kind of twisted company for him down there.
That idea about Praxis amplifying the spell, that's really interesting. Adds another layer.
It does, a theological one. The idea that divine power, even just its presence, could be unbearable for mortals trying to wield too much arcane energy. It suggests boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Between mortal magic and the gods, like a warning about messing with forces you don't understand. A classic cautionary tale baked into the zone's backstory.
So today, Kedge Keep is just the ruins, filled with creatures.
Pretty much. Overrun by lancers, piranhas, sailfins, seahorses, tons of sharks.
Sharks, right.
And those enchanted mermaids, of course. You find named mobs, too, like the seahorse matriarch Undertow.
And those named mobs often tie into the loot situation, don't they?
Exactly. Many act as placeholders for the valuable stuff. Which brings us back to that perception about loot.
Right, the old Kedge doesn't drop much loot idea.
And yeah, for just general vendor trash, maybe that was true.
Hmm?
Some common wands or whatever might kind of suck unless you needed them for a specific quest.
Okay.
However, Kedge Keep is absolutely viable for some incredibly specific, high-value items, particularly the EverQuest pieces.
Ah, the epics. Yes. That's the key, isn't it?
That's the hidden value, absolutely. Finnegal himself drops components for multiple epics. The blue crystal stats for wizards.
Right.
The Kedge backbone for bards. Robe of the Kedge for rogues. Staff of elemental mastery. Water for mages.
Oh, wow, that's huge.
It is. Plus other decent items like the Trident of the Seven Seas, Wand of Mana Tapping, fusible coral ore for research.
So, okay, you weren't getting rich quick off random drops, maybe?
Right.
But having those major epic pieces tied to Finnegal made it a critical destination for high-level players.
Exactly. It wasn't just a random boss drop. It was a deliberate design choice. To get your ultimate class weapon or item, you had to go into the heart of this tragedy, face the guy responsible.
It forces you to engage with the story.
Precisely. The loot reinforces the narrative, makes you care about Finnegal and what happened there. It's actually quite brilliant design when you think about it.
Okay, so we've got the tragic story, the Kedge, Finnegal. Let's talk location. Where is this underwater city?
We're on the continent of Fadeware.
Fadeware, home of dwarves, elves, gnomes.
That's the one. The name Fadeware actually came from high elves who moved there from Antonica after the death of the Eldar forest. So the continent itself has this ancient tragic backstory too.
It's got such varied zones, hasn't it? Butcher Block, Akanon, Castle Mistmore.
Very diverse. And significantly, Fadeware is home to two of Norath's, oldest and scariest figures. Mang Mistmore,
The Vampire Lord.
and Finnegal Atropos. So Fadeware isn't just a starting zone, it's a landmark by ancient magic, conflict, ambition, disaster. Kedge Keep fits right into that theme of tragedy and consequence.
And the way in is through Dagnor's Cauldron, that lake near Butcher Block.
That's right. The source is called a blasted lake area. It's basically this big donut-shaped lake with a rocky spire in the middle. And the entrance to Kedge is underwater in that lake, northwest of the entrance to Unrest.
Yeah.
And like we said, marked by that ruined marble portico. A very visual clue.
And the area around the lake isn't exactly friendly either?
No, monsters in the lake, aqua goblins, undead, snakes on the cliffs.
Oh.
Though there is that little camp of the Fab Four heroes, too.
The Fab Four. A little bit of light relief.
Adds some character. And the name Dagnor's Cauldron, that's another piece of violent history.
Oh, yeah.
Named after a battle in the Ogre-Dwarf War. Dwarven King grimly stabbed the Ogre warlord Dagnor. Spear shattered, Dagnor fell in the lake.
Uh-huh.
And the lore says the evil in his blood made the water boil and turn red. So the dwarves mockingly called it Dagnor's Cauldron. The battle was the Battle of the Shattered Spear.
Wow. So even the zone leading to Kedge Keep is born from violence and tragedy. It really sets the mood.
It does. It's like the environment itself is foreshadowing what's inside. The need for water breathing, the unique vertical design. It's all part of the story. That blasted lake born from war leads you to a ruined city born from magical hubris.
EverQuest really used mechanics and environment to tell the story, didn't it?
Absolutely. That water breathing requirement. It instantly makes the zone feel alien, hostile.
Yeah.
You have to adapt. It is the challenge right from the start.
So this unique place, this intense challenge, it wasn't an accident. We need to talk about the why, the Dungeons and Dragons influence.
Yes, this is critical to understanding Kedge Keep and really a lot of early EverQuest. The creators were tabletop RPG guys through and through.
Right.
Bill Trost, co-creator, lead designer, huge D&D background, lots of DMing experience. He designed so much of NORAD's feel, the zones, the maps. A lot of it apparently came from his own teenage RPG campaign world.
Fair way.
Yeah. And Tony Garcia, the main quest designer, played D&D with Trost since they were kids. Brad McQuaid, Steve Clover, also big RPG backgrounds. That lineage is everything.
And Kedge Keep feels like a prime example of taking a D&D dungeon concept, especially the difficulty, and putting it in an MMO for levels 30s to 50s, right?
Right in that meaty, mid to high level range. And Bill Trost was pretty open about his DM style translating into game design. He said, break it. If I felt the players had something they shouldn't have, I break it.
Wow, harsh.
He admitted it might not go over too well with everyone and was a constant debate internally, but it shows it was deliberate. They chose to make zones like Kedge punishing. It came straight from that hardcore tabletop philosophy.
Like having a really tough DM running the world.
Exactly. And there were practical reasons, too. Early EQ had major server overcrowding. They talked about dungeon reservation systems.
I remember that.
Difficult zones like Kedge acted as high-level content sinks, places that wouldn't be constantly overrun. But more than that, Brad McQuaid always said his goal was to make people have to work together.
The forced cooperation.
He believed overcoming tough challenges together built those strong bonds that kept people playing. Kedge forced you to cooperate.
And thinking about loot again, this philosophy fits, right? Not tons of easy vendor loot, but those specific, super valuable, epic pieces from the big boss.
Totally. Pinnacle originally had, a 12-hour respawn? Later, maybe 3 hours on some servers. That signals high value. It wasn't about showering players with junk. It was about making them earn those defining items.
So bottom line, Kedge wasn't hard just because. It was a deliberate echo of tabletop RPG design.
Absolutely. A deliberate manifestation of it. They wanted a dangerous world, real challenges, success earned through teamwork and planning, like beating a tough campaign module.
Yeah.
That old school difficulty, frustrating as it was, created that sense of accomplishment and community. Scarcity of general loot plus high-value epic drops, rewards that felt truly earned.
Okay, let's get into the specific mechanics then. The stuff that really felt like a DM messing with you.
Oh, there are plenty. First off, the whole vertical design and Z-axis stuff.
Yes.
Having to go through ceilings and floors, thinking vertically, but technically it caused serious Z-axis issues for combat. Spells and aggro were a nightmare.
You'd pull stuff from floors away.
Exactly. Cast an AoE, suddenly you've got mobs from above and below joining the party. Deadly trains out of nowhere. It was pushing the limits of early 3D MMO tech. They even delayed putting Unrest in EQ2, partly because of issues with 100% underwater zones and Z-axis combat. Kedge was pioneering, but man, it could be frustrating.
In the pathing. Oh god, the pathing.
Legendary. Notorious for its pathing problems, pets, pulled mobs.
Yeah.
They just get stuck, take the weirdest routes back to you.
Growing everything along the way.
Yep. Bringing back another deadly train.
Yeah.
It felt like that unpredictable monster behavior a DM throws at you when you mess up a pull. Consequences.
And you couldn't fear kite mobs in there either, could you?
Nope. Immune. The inhabitants were immune to fear-type spells and never run, which meant spells that had a fear component could actually backfire and cause trains if you weren't super careful. It's like undead or constructs in D&D, built-in resistance to cheap tactics.
Plus specific resistances, like cold immunity.
Yeah, classic D&D. Immune to cold, but fire worked great. Encouraged you to bring a diverse group. Think about damage types, just like in tabletop.
And the exploding fish. The shimmering sailfins.
Yes. A perfect little DM trap. Even a low-level looking fish could just explode upon death for like 400 damage. Nasty surprise if you weren't ready for it.
But maybe the absolute worst killer. Just going AFK.
Oh, the deadly AFK danger. If that enduring breath spell dropped while you stepped away, you were dead. No question. Party probably couldn't save you.
Right.
And getting your corpse back was a nightmare. Underwater, maybe bugged, stuck in a wall. Needed special items or spells just to reach it. It hammered home the consequences of death managing your resources. Very old school D&D difficulty.
And even just moving was hard. You couldn't swim backwards easily.
Not without sow or something, which you couldn't cast underwater. So if you were pulling or running, you had to turn your back on whatever was chasing you.
Leaving you open to getting bashed or stunned.
Exactly. By faster stuff like the swordfish. Every move was a risk. A hostile, calculated environment.
And the monsters themselves, they also felt kind of familiar to tabletop players, didn't they?
Definitely strong parallels.
Right.
The Kedge race themselves, intelligent, fish-like, they line up really well with D&D Sahuagin.
The Sea Devils.
Yeah, the Sea Devils are sharkmen. Evil fish people, shark-like personalities, hate weakness, commune with sharks. Kedge Keep is packed with sharks, right? Sahuagin are intelligent, organized, have a god. The Kedge really feel like EverQuest's spin on that Sahuagin archetype, heavily inspired at least.
Okay, and Finnegal, who does he map onto?
Finnegal, ancient powerful wizard, last survivor, tormented immortal, commands enchanted mermaids. He has strong echoes of D&D's aboleths.
Aboleths, is those creepy psychic fish things.
Exactly. The ancient nightmare water beasties
Yeah.
supposedly ruled the world way back when, enslaved others. They have perfect memory. They're immortal unless killed violently. Huge psionic powers, dominate minds, create thralls.
Ah, the thralls, like the enchanted mermaids.
Precisely. Finnegal's quest for knowledge, the disaster, maybe tapping divine power. It all resonates with that ancient, powerful, potentially world-breaking vibe of the aboleth. The enchanted mermaids as his thralls. It's a very direct parallel.
So they weren't just making stuff up, they were drawing from this rich D&D bestiary, a clear pipeline of influence.
Absolutely. Adapting these compelling archetypes. And underwater dungeons themselves were a thing in D&D modules too, you know. Pearl of Madness, parts of Princes of the Apocalypse. Kedge Keep was building on an established tabletop trope.
When you put it all together, Kedge Keep's legacy is, well, it's pretty profound, isn't it? A real testament to that early EQ design, that dungeon crawl feel, still feels unique, dark, watery.
It really is. And understanding that the difficulty, the weird mechanics, the environment, none of it was accidental.
Right.
It was all deliberate choices by developers who loved D&D, who wanted a dangerous world where you had to work together, plan, and really earn your success, just like in a tough campaign.
That old school difficulty, it definitely forged bonds. And the way loot worked, not much junk, but those huge, epic rewards that just reinforced the feeling of accomplishment, didn't it?
It absolutely did. And it showed their ambition, too. Pushing technical limits with the Z-axis underwater, trying things even if players found them frustrating, like a hard-ass DM might. It was really pioneering stuff, warts and all.
And I think for you, the listener, even if Kedge Keep was maddening, or maybe because it's unforgettable, right?
Yeah.
It sticks with you. Maybe it's like the sources suggest the best rewards aren't just the loot, but overcoming the challenge, building those bonds in the deep, and the stories you came away with.
Which maybe leaves us with a question to think about. How does that mix the technical limits of the time, combined with that hardcore tabletop design philosophy we saw in Kedge Keep? How does that shape the gaming memories that stick with us the most? Does the struggle, the frustration itself, actually make the eventual victory and the shared experience feel more valuable in the long run?
Something to definitely mull over. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.